right, we're doing it.
Great.
Does it look like it's recording?
Yeah, there's a record button in the top left-hand corner.
Yeah, it's red.
Okay, great. Hello, world. Welcome to September 10th. Is that recording my whole window? Oh gosh, 1 second. This is embarrassing.
You can start over if you want, Carolyn.
Never take 3 weeks off. Okay. Welcome to Kubernetes SIG service catalog. Our agenda is posted in the chat here in Zoom. If you'd like, please put your name in the attendees so that we know that you're here. This week we have very special guests. Peter and Matt will be showing us how they're using service catalog with pod presets. And I'm super excited about this. And I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to them.
Okay, then do you hear me, guys? One more time. I will check it before I will say something more. Then let me share the screen. Okay, then first of all, we'd like to introduce ourselves in a few seconds. And overall, we had some discussions with you about the pod preset, how you want to go further with that functionality. And then with some communication with Jay and Doug, we decided to do a presentation about what we are doing and take some your comments about that. Mainly, we'd like to show you what we add as a service catalog add-ons in our project. That means things around the bindings and then how we are injecting that in the automatic way to the applications. And overall, we are working for SAP. I'm the product owner in the really quite new project, which we started almost 1 year ago. And mainly I'm responsible for the service catalog integration and some brokers like Helm broker for the local installation of the some components. And also we provided broker for the remote environment applications, which mainly we are working on Kema. And Kema itself is for the connecting and extension of the enterprise applications through the Kubernetes and the components like service catalog. And that remote environment broker is really allowing the application, remote application to register some APIs, then also events through the service catalog. And mainly I'm working on that. Mateusz?
Yeah, yeah, so I'm a developer. I'm something around 3 years into cloud native stuff. Currently, I'm working on the Kema project, and I'm in the same team with PK, so I'm just implementing the stuff which he already described. And that's all.
Okay, then thank you, Mateusz. Then we can go with the agenda. Shortly, I'd like to introduce you what those two new custom resource definitions really means through the documentation and some UI operations, because we also build the UI around the service catalog and our stuff. And those two first point will be for me. Then Mateusz will explain more about what that binding usage controller is doing, how it works with pod presets, how it restarts the end applications to get the credentials injected, and show everything from the CLI, because we tried from the beginning to allow every operation allowed in the UI and the CLI itself. And at the end, we'd like to talk about a bit next steps, like that we want to integrate with your CLI, and also maybe talk with you about what's the future of the pod presets. Because also when we started 1 year ago, that was the alpha version of the service catalog. Then from that time, we were using alpha pod presets feature from the Kubernetes itself. Right now, we were forced 1 or 2 months ago to move it out and use that new one, because we got the requirement to be able to run our system in the managed clusters. And of course, that alpha feature is not available there, at least in the GKE, and we are not able to start our solution. Okay, then let's go with a short thing that we were open sourcing our project 2 months ago, and last 2 weeks we were also added to that CNCF landscape with our project. and we will go just to the documentation where I will talk about that features. And in the service catalog, in the details of the provisioning and binding, and maybe also about the custom resources. Of course, we are using everything from you. A really great job for the namespace classes as well, that we already integrating that in our system. And besides your custom resources, we provided two new, the service binding usage and usage kind. And let's start with the service binding usage first. And I will talk about that. And as you see on the left, there is your domain, where we have that, of course, service instance. Then when ready, we can create service bindings. And then we find out that we need something that will inject those credentials to the application. And we realize that through the service binding usage. And we already use the custom resource definitions for those things. And also when we were implementing that, we were checking how you are doing things on your side. That, for example, you cannot delete service instance if you still have service bindings. And we tried also do the same things on our side to keep it smooth and working the same. And I guess somehow we achieve it. And the service binding usage is about what will be injected where. What is always the service binding itself. Mateusz further will, in the next section, will present it, how it's exactly defined. And where we use for that, at the beginning, we just had hard-coded deployment. That means we are able to inject it to the pods of the deployment. Right now, we implemented that new thing, which is called usage kind. And that custom resource, by that one, we can really define the end application. That means it's mainly about the information for the pod preset, where it can find the labels path in the definition. That means we find out that many custom resources are wrapped really around the deployment, like functions from the kubeless, like configuration from the Knative, and so on. And we can really easily define those new things, new kinds, and it will work with the service binding usage, that we can use it as the type to inject, and then we can pick up the instance of it. At the end, it's always pod, and pod preset is doing a job, but those things are defined in those particular custom resources. And of course, we need to save it there to not lose that data, because at the end, function is really creating the deployment, and we cannot modify deployment, because when function will be changed, we also will lose that information about the labels. Okay, then that's about those two things. I will just show you in the brief our UI. That's the UI for our platform, whatever, and then we have a service catalog. For the purpose of easiness, I just have a hand broker with one class, which is called Redis. I can also show you that in our other clusters, for example, we have the Azure broker in, where we can see that classes are extended, and also about mode environment classes that, for example, user can define register the APIs that we can then create some services on our site and call them, and also events that we can really trigger some lambdas and so on. Okay, then let's go to that example of the Redis, of how to close it. Okay, here. Let's just provision the instance of it to just show you how it works. We also have that input parameters from the OSB API with nested attributes handling. Let's create it. And when we will go to the service instances view, we see that the new guy is provisioning. I already prepared one, which is the Redis. And also as an end application, I will use the Lambda from the kubeless. I prepared the short Lambda, which is the Redis client. And I will inject the service binding credentials. First, I need to create them. We have a wizard where we creating service binding and service binding usage really in the one step in the UI, but at the end they are two separate, of course, custom resources for that. let's do the service binding. Then I can pick up the type of the end application, which is really that usage kind. Let's mark the function and the instance of that function. Okay, and at the end we have the secret from you, and also in the Lambda itself, as you see, it's restarting. All of those init containers from kubeless are doing a job right now. Also Istio itself, the sidecar, and we see that those three environment variables are injected, and the same we can really easily unbind it and so on. Of course, we will improve that as well, the UI, to have a separate really view for the bindings and service binding usage, because also with service binding usage, we can reuse bindings. That we are not recommending that, but there is a such possibility, and even some other system will require that. Okay, that was the short demo from my side. Mateusz, you can continue with some more information about our custom resources and controller itself.
Yeah, of course. So thank you, PK. Let me share my screen. Just a second. Okay, and now you should be able to see it. So PK already showed you the overview of the service binding usage, and now I want to show you in details of the architecture of the binding usage controller, because as we already know, we are using the custom resource definition, and we created the controller for it, and scroll down to the diagram. And what we can see, first of all, we have the service binding usages, which we are watching, and two sections we have here. First of all is the service binding reference, which is the reference to the service binding, and also used by section. It says which resource which will use this service binding. So in general, where we should inject secrets in the given deployment or function. In this case, we have the kind deployment. When binding usage controller discovered such service binding usage, I don't know, it's deleted, created, updated, then we're checking if we are having such usage kind. If yes, then we are creating pod preset. And of course, we are creating pod preset with the secret reference gathered from the service binding itself, and then creating the binding the labels. Here's the pattern for the key and the value. And after that, we applying same label to given resource. In such case, we are adding the label to the deployment under this path. So we can see that it's actually the same path. And under this path, we are adding also the same label. Additionally, we're also adding the annotation. For now, they are using for the tracing. And the example is here. We are having the binding usage name and also injected label section. Here we have the label, which is used by the pod preset for the pod preset functionality, and also another label. And this label is gathered from the cluster service class of the service class. Because when we are doing the process of the reconciliation for the given service binding usage, we also checking given cluster service class or service class for service binding. If we will discover there the binding labels, the section with the binding labels under the metadata, then we are fetching all those data and adding also under the same path. It's a generic solution. For now, we have one case for that, but we can discuss that and maybe extract it from the controller.
I will just add one sentence about that.
Yeah.
Right now we are thinking to maybe move it out from the service catalog.
Yeah.
Because mostly that was for that classes which are under the Istio, that we are also giving to the given deployment some labels that then they are checked on the Istio side if that service can communicate with other services, but yeah, it's optional.
Yeah, it's optional, and for now we have only one use case, so probably it will be extracted. But worth to mention is that we are using the pod preset from the service catalog, because the one from the Kubernetes was in the alpha state, so we couldn't create the managed cluster. And what is also to mention is that we are supporting namespace scope brokers. So we are distinguish the cluster service class and the service class itself. So let's go to the demo. We'll do that via the CLI. First of all, we already saw that we have the we have the instance Okay, and also we have the binding for it. So I also created the deployment. I already have the pod here. Let's check it. Okay, deployment redis. It was created by just applying this simple YAM. It's nothing special here. And what I want to do is to inject these secrets from this binding into this deployment. First of all, let's describe this deployment. And we will see that there is no annotation about the pod preset itself, and what's more, there is no information about other additional environments. So we can also print the environments from the pod, and we will see that we do not have any host here or port, which will be in a second added here. Okay, so to do that, you already know, we create the service binding usage. I will just show you how it looks like in the YAML. So we added new custom resource definition, and it's similar to what you already saw in the diagram, architecture diagram. Two sections, service binding reference and use by. The use by requires that we have some usage kinds already in the cluster. So let's check what the usage kind we already have. So here the UK is a shortcut for the usage kind. Okay, and for now we have two of them, one for the deployment and another for the function. Here is not so readable, so I will show you which YAM were applied to get those usage kind into cluster. First was deployment, and this is the name. You already know the labels path where we are using it. The display name, it was used on the UI, and also important stuff is here, the resource. Here we are defining the group kind of version. It's required to create the generic client in controller. So for the function is a different one, and for deployment also. So let's back to the service binding usage. Print it one more time, and let's try to apply it. So before doing that, I will watch the resources into Kubernetes. First, I will watch the pod preset from the service catalog in the namespace production. Next, I will watch the service binding itself, and also watch my application pod. So already we saw the pod presets and service binding usage which we created, and now we try to create another one for the deployment called deploy redis client. How we do that? Okay, and now we should see that the new service binding usage was created called deploy redis client, and also another pod preset 5 seconds ago was created, and the deployment was restarted. So now we automatically should inject all secrets into those deployment. So into this pod. Let's describe it one more time. Describe pod preset. Okay. It's obvious that we have the pod preset annotation. What's more, we have also added our label, which is used by this pod preset. And the important stuff is that we injected the redis credential as a variable. So we can one more time print the environment variables from this code, and we will see that new environment like host. Yeah, you can see host for the Redis. You can see the Redis password, and also we should see the pod. Yeah, here is it. And another good feature which we added is about the prefixing, because consider such scenario. We have the application, this application which should use two different databases, and when we will inject the same credential one more time, then we will get the conflict, because another database can also have the port, also can have the host name, so there will be a problem, and we already have such situation. So we can come up with the adding environment prefix into the service binding usage. So what I will do, I will just copy the basic service binding usage we already see and modify it. First of all, I will change the name, that's add the prefix, and add a new section. Under the parameters, I will add the end prefix name. Okay, let's come with the app v2. Why not? Okay, so let's save it. Print it one more time to have transparency of what we are doing. Perfect. Nice. And create it. Perfect. Nice. What we will do, we'll create another service binding usage, another purpose was created, and the deployment is restarted. So let's describe it one more time. And what you can see is that another purpose was added, another label, but the important stuff is that another credential was injected with given prefix. So we will have no collision, but let's print the environment variables. Okay. And now, as you can see, we have the app v2 host, port, and the Redis password. Of course, for now it's the same, but in the real case scenario, there will be two different databases, and we can reuse that. And before I will say thank you, I want to one more time mention about why we decide to use different service binding and service binding usage. Because when we are creating the service binding, we are already creating the secret. And when you have separate service binding usage, you can reuse those secrets in several applications. And already Google comes with the same situation where they created the GCP broker, and they have a situation where they are creating single service account for given domain. For example, they have two applications in the same domain, and they want to share the secret with these two applications. When we have the separate service binding and service binding usage, we can do that without any problems. We will do that, all that thing in the one resource, then can be a problem that we all the time creating new secret. Okay, you can somehow parameterize this, but to be honest, the API will not be such readable and user-friendly in our opinion. So I think that's basically all what I want to show you. Thank you.
Okay, then we already took too much time, really. Then maybe we can leave the next steps. What we just wanted to say that we really like what you did in the CLI, and one of our ideas when we are outside catalog was to use that register the SVCAT as a kubectl plugin and somehow or decorate it with our custom resources, that it will be the same unified developer experience, let's say, for that. And the second topic was about the pod presets, and maybe more about the questions to you, because right now we reuse that newest repository with the pod preset, and by our own, we right now generated the image that we are using for that.
The image and also Helm charts, which are...
Yes, we also provided the Helm chart to install that, and we of course like to contribute into that together with you. And I guess, Mateusz, do you have something else to add? Because you used too much time, really. You're
the only people on the agenda, so take as much time as you need. This is really neat.
Yeah.
Okay. Then yeah.
Start with the Q&A because I already see the questions.
I think you answered both questions, actually. We were typing it as you were doing the presentation. And then you answered it like the next slide as you moved on.
Okay, answer the question. Okay.
Yeah, then we also seen that when we really tried to use that new pod preset functionality, and then we also realized that your team is also doing some job around such a automation, and we'd like to join forces for that. And yeah,
because important thing here is that we started around 1 year ago, so Service Catalog didn't have such functionality, so we needed to deploy it and create it by our own. But now we see that Jeff already has some working examples, so maybe we can just connect two ideas together and have something working out of the box with the Service Catalog.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about anyone else. I'd be super interested in figuring out if there's pieces of this that we can upstream into Service Catalog. Our pod preset stuff, someone else can correct me, but it feels like that's super stalled. So if you want to try to revive it, that would.
Yeah, I can give a brief update on the pod presets. Jeff did a lot of work, as you know, and he said he'd reach out to you. I told him about your demo today, and he couldn't attend, but he said he would be up for discussing with you. Him and Paul are talking with, I think it's either SIG apps or SIG API, I can't recall which, about finding a new home for the pod preset work. I think there was general agreement that it wasn't specific enough to belong in Service Catalog, so there is a desire to find a new home for it. So definitely reach out to Jeff, and I think there'd be some real enthusiasm to have you guys join him with that effort and making sure that we find a good landing spot for it and drive it to completion. This was a great demo. I enjoyed seeing it.
Thank you. We also think that as also Jeff thinking like that pod preset should be still separate, right? That it should be not one custom resource, but separated, because it's giving us more flexibility with that we can reuse one service binding 2 times, right? Because if it will be one custom resource, then every time we need to create a new secret. And in some cases, it could be a blocker, like Mateusz shown with that GCP integration. They are suggesting really to reusing that secret.
I had a quick question. I heard you talk about next steps. I think you mentioned the CLI, but I couldn't quite tell what exactly you were looking for to work with us on.
Yes, because everything really depends on if those 2 solutions are separate or one. Because if it's one, then it's easy. It's one CLI for that. But if you are outside and we like to do that, as I said, unified developer experience, that they are really working with service binding usages through the SVCAT CLI. I was thinking about, because your CLI could be used as a plugin from the kubectl, right? And kubectl SVCAT something. And I was thinking to create the plugin really, SVCAT, and then reuse it internally, your CLI, and do such a developer experience. And somehow those domains are so separated that there are no collisions. Even you will upgrade something really with big changes on your site, those service binding usages are quite different feature, that they are just need service binding, that's it. They don't care about the service instances itself or classes even, right? Too much. And today we just wanted to present it to you and just make you aware that we are working on that, and we also want to contribute to the service catalog itself. And that's a starting point.
Yeah. So we have a plugin right now, but the entire plugin architecture for kubectl is changing. I don't know if you're aware of this.
To keep it on the server side, you mean that?
No, I mean that they are removing the current methods for making kubectl plugins. They're deprecating it, and they are changing to Git style plugins, where if you have a binary on your path, it's called kubectl and then foo. If you type then kubectl foo like this, it'll find it and execute your binary for you. But it kind of changes how things work and what we have to do, and it also gives us more options. So I don't know if you'd like to maybe open an issue and we can kind of chat about what commands you think you'd like to support, and we can figure out how to make something that works for both. I'd be happy to engage with you on that. But I just want to give you a heads up that the whole thing's kind of changing, so that may make our lives actually easier.
Okay, that's great. But I also heard that they plan to store that kubectl plugins on the server side. That means you don't need to have them downloaded locally, but they are somehow available in the given instance of the cluster, And then when you are connected, you are getting those plugins. That means you don't need to install everything on your, but it's another story, right? But I also heard that they think about something like that.
I haven't seen that as an accepted proposal yet. I know that's been kicked around, but I haven't been following closely for the past 2 months, so maybe that's more recent. I know that, I think it's Google has a project that they just started called, oh dear, does anyone remember what it was called? It like helps you ship kubectl plugins. It's like a plugin manager. Jonathan, do you remember the name of that? Starts with a K. Crew, yeah. Yeah, have you seen Crew?
Nope. Mateusz?
Okay, let me see if I can find this. Because I bet.
See, they should have just called it plugin. That's easy to remember.
Here we go. Okay, I found it. I'll paste that in chat. Just so you're aware, they reached out to us to try to see if we'd like to put the SVCat plugin after it's revamped to work with the new model into this as well. So just want to make you aware too, in case you end up making something separate from SVCat, that I don't know, this seems out there and people are actively working on it too. I'm not so sure about the server-side distribution, how far along that is.
Then we will for sure check it.
Cool.
And also such an open question, because in Service Catalog you have many alpha features, right? Like pod preset itself, and like, you know, catalog restrictions, other stuff. Do you see a possibility that such a things like we presented could be alpha feature for some time? I don't know. How did you have such a bigger contributions like we presented, or rather you are don't want to do such a stuff? I'm just asking, right? Because how to maybe do a next step somehow, if you like to.
Let me make sure I understand. You're saying, would it be useful to take a lot of what you've shown here and make them alpha features inside of Service Catalog?
Yeah, just a question, because I also see that the pod preset is somehow outside, has a separate repository, right? You had such a decision. But on the other hand, we see that pod preset as alpha feature, right? It was generating the custom resource, but without the controller itself, because it's currently, Jeff is, I guess, working on that. But you already, I'm asking about the scope of your APIs, right? It's defined, you don't want to go further, or you think about that maybe including such a thing like we shown, it makes sense.
I can't speak for the whole group. I'm in favor of getting things that meet the user workflows we're trying to support in Service Catalog, but I don't want to be a roadblock either. So I love what you've done and you've worked with it. I'd be perfectly happy to meet more and chat and maybe work out a proposal and have the whole group look at it and figure out if there's pieces of it or more of it, like how much we could bring into Service Catalog. But I think Null asked the question too, who would maintain that in the long term? Yeah, I don't know. Questions like that, I think we could hammer out if we were able to define like what pieces in particular we would be trying to bring upstream. But yeah, I mean, I'd be open to chatting about that and looking into it for sure.
Yeah, that's really important question that Neil asked about the maintenance. And right now, with Kema itself, we want to more and more contribute to the project arounds, and we plan to do that constantly right now. But yeah, mainly I think that we will somehow maintain that as working with you, right? And but yeah, it's many other things like it's already 10 p.m. But for the SIG meeting, that could be not so easy every day. But you're meeting one per week, right? In the SIG.
Yeah, we meet once per week. We're also in the Slack channel quite a bit. And otherwise, like, I'm happy to, meet one-off if we need to on a more friendly time. Other people may be up for that too.
Okay, that's great.
Cool. Thank you so much. Does anyone else have more questions about how this works, or is interested in being like, yeah, I want to get involved too? Just trying to encourage people to do work for us. That's all. Don't mind me. Sweet. I want to move on to one more piece from our agenda today, which was some of our proposals have been around for a while, and they're actually implemented like namespace service brokers, but we still have the PR open, and the PRs are marked as like do not merge. And I was hoping maybe some of the other chairs, like Doug or whatever, could comment on like, what do we do with these? Can we merge them so that we keep track of what was brought in, or do we just like close it and then tell people to look at a closed, unmerged PR if they want to know how the proposal worked?
Wait, I'm confused. The PR itself for namespace brokers is already merged, right?
So the proposal for namespace service brokers stayed open this whole time.
But the code itself is merged. But the code itself is merged, right?
Yeah, the code itself is merged. This is the file that had like the full proposal that explained how everything should work and why we're doing it and
So
all that.
Does of all the PRs that went in to support namespace brokers, did they include all the documentation necessary for someone to be able to use it?
I would say no. I think that we're like 80% there. We're still missing features in the CLI in particular for namespace service brokers to be considered feature complete.
Okay. I don't see much value in having the proposal document itself living on. I would think the documentation for the namespace brokers should have all the information that's necessary, because if there's something missing from the documentation, we should add it. I don't think the proposal is almost stale the minute it's written, right? So I tend to think of those as being not very useful. So I'm all in favor of closing it, basically.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this, and I'm going to open up at least one issue that says we need to mine that proposal for missing documentation and get that as a living document in our own docs website instead. I think it's a really good idea to look at it, just so that these don't keep hanging around forever and people get confused about how our proposals
Sounds
work.
good. Yep.
Not only missing doc, but it might be a good spot to also do what functionality is still left. I don't know. I think there's like a handful of svcat commands, right, Carolyn?
That's right. I have Arthur and I think Jen both working on finishing up support so that like all the columns are displaying and telling you where it's coming from and things like that. But it's not completely finished. So I can go through and I'd like to close this though, just so that people are, because people are looking at this and they can't tell if this is a committed thing or not at this point. I get pinged about it. So I'd like to be able to close it and say, this is in, here's the doc, and then here's what we're still missing.
Sounds good.
Okay, I'll do that then. Well, that's all I have for today, unless anyone else has stuff they'd like to chat about. No?
So from my side, one question regarding our stuff. If who can contact to talk about our proposition and about our case, if we can create such proposal and discuss the further steps, what we should do to have it in the service catalog, for example.
I'm happy to work with you. I don't know if Jay, you have time too. This seems like a feature that maybe you'd all be interested in, well, because you have more experience with pod presets.
Yeah,
definitely.
Because Jeff already working on something similar, so maybe we can connect forces together somehow.
Yeah, definitely. So Carolyn and I would certainly be interested in talking with you, and I do think we ought to, outside of this band, we ought to close with Jeff Peeler on the pod preset stuff.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, so I can, if you hit me up, I can show you how the proposal process works.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can start that, but we'll just make sure that we have the appropriate people from Red Hat included as well, because we said they're super involved with prod presets as well. And then maybe we could set up a meeting to just kind of sync up a little bit more about the individual features and things like that. Because I think if we try to do all of this asynchronously on a GitHub issue from the beginning, this may be a very long turnaround time between each comment.
Such a commit with such number of lines could be a problem, really.
Yeah.
And it's a never-ending story for the reviewing them, or someone will just see, okay, it's too much. Yeah, but we can really split it and discuss it further, because I understand that other systems like OpenShift and so on also doing such a things, and the question is how they are realizing that in the UI itself, or some another applications doing that stuff. We can think about that to maybe unify that and create something common. But that was really a nice time, guys. It was a pleasure to meet you. First time here, because we're already slacking with with you. Some issues, but yeah, it's always nice to see you guys.
Great. Thanks for your time, guys.
Yeah, thank you. It was a great demo.
Thank you very much. Yeah,
Thank you very much.
All right. Bye.
All right, everyone. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.